The empath possesses natural capacity for deep emotional connection, vulnerability, and open-hearted engagement with relationships that defines their approach to intimacy. However, when subjected to repeated cycles of emotional unavailability, rejection, and dismissive treatment from avoidant partners, their inherent nature undergoes profound transformation as protective mechanism. This shift from empathic openness to guarded detachment represents not character change, but survival adaptation, a strategic withdrawal from vulnerability that once left them exposed to consistent harm. The transformed empath develops avoidant characteristics that mirror the very patterns that wounded them. The death of naive hope and open vulnerability. The empath reaches breaking point where their natural inclination toward giving people chances and believing in their capacity for change finally exhausts itself through repeated disappointment and betrayal. They recognize that their openness and emotional availability have been consistently exploited by partners who took their patience for granted and interpreted their understanding as permission for poor treatment. This realization triggers fundamental shift where hope transforms into protective skepticism and vulnerability becomes calculated risk rather than natural state. The transformed empath develops defensive barriers they never previously possessed, approaching new connections with caution and suspicion rather than enthusiastic openness. They begin withholding emotional investment until extensive proof of worthiness has been demonstrated, reversing their former pattern of giving trust freely and withdrawing only after betrayal. This protective adaptation emerges not from desire to become emotionally unavailable, but from survival necessity after their empathic nature left them repeatedly devastated by avoidant partners who could not reciprocate their depth of feeling. The strategic emotional distance as self-preservation. The empath who has been hurt repeatedly begins maintaining deliberate emotional distance that contradicts their natural inclination toward deep connection and emotional intimacy. They recognize that their previous pattern of rapid attachment and full emotional investment left them vulnerable to partners who neither valued nor reciprocated their openness. This leads to conscious decision to mirror the very detachment they once found confusing and painful in avoidant partners, protecting themselves by refusing to care too much or invest too deeply. This transformation manifests as the empath implementing boundaries they previously struggled to maintain, refusing to chase partners who withdraw, and walking away from inconsistency without the endless attempts at understanding and accommodation that characterize their past behavior. They adopt avoidance strategies not because these feel natural, but because their empathic approach consistently resulted in them being taken advantage of by emotionally unavailable partners. The irony proves painful as they recognize they have become the very thing they once tried so hard to heal in others. The shutdown of emotional accessibility. The repeatedly hurt empath begins suppressing their natural emotional expressiveness and accessibility that once defined their relational style. They learn to hide their feelings, minimize their needs, and present a facade of independence that masks their authentic desire for deep connection. This shutdown represents protective response to having their emotions dismissed, their needs labeled as excessive, and their vulnerability used against them by partners who could not handle or honor their emotional depth. The transformed empath discovers that showing less emotion produces better treatment from potential partners, confirming their painful learning that vulnerability invites exploitation rather than reciprocal intimacy. They begin testing partners through withdrawal and distance rather than through open communication, adopting the very tactics they once found manipulative and confusing. This shift stems from recognition that their emotional transparency provided roadmap for others to hurt them while their own needs remained chronically unmet. The permanent scar tissue that prevents full opening. The empath who has transformed into avoidant develops psychological scar tissue that prevents them from ever fully returning to their original open-hearted state even when they encounter partners worthy of that vulnerability.